possibilities were, because we're at war. And when he died, in the 4 cases we're talking about, Niger, my son's case in Afghanistan, when he died, he was surrounded by the best men on this earth, his friends. That's what the president tried to say to 4 families the other day. I was stunned when I came to work yesterday morning and brokenhearted at what I saw and remember Congress doing.
Because then it became political. Joining us right now with the reaction is our panel today, former Navy SEAL and CEO of Combat Wounded Coalition, Jason Redman, at the far left right there. Good morning. Retired Army Ranger Sean Parnell, he's in the center, and Army vet and former New York City Police Department officer, Dr. Darren Porcher. Good morning, both.
Thanks for having us. Good morning.
You two have actually made this kind of call.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And as we heard from the general yesterday, not only is it a hard call to make, but it's about something so sacred. It is about telling the family of a fallen soldier that they made the ultimate sacrifice. And unfortunately, it has become politicized this week.
Absolutely. I mean, this call comes in 2 factions. The first faction is you have someone that's referred to as a casualty officer. That individual makes a direct contact. That they show up at the family's door, and they explain
first light,
right,
knocks on the door.
And then I spoke from the perspective of being an executive officer of a unit, and I had to make those calls. I've only made few of them, but it's a very difficult task.
And we heard yesterday, Sean, John F. Kelly say that the best calls come from the people who knew the fallen soldier.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, I've made hundreds of these calls when my unit was in Afghanistan. We did 2 separate deployments to Afghanistan, and my second deployment, part of my job was taking care of the wounded soldiers and families that had lost loved ones. And I can tell you that those conversations are the most challenging and difficult and sacred conversations that you have as a military officer. And for it to be politicized in any way by a sitting U.S. Congresswoman who's now parading around and acting and calling herself a rock star, it is morally reprehensible in every way. And universally as Americans, we should condemn her actions and hold sacred those conversations. It's a private conversation between the president and our commander-in-chief. Yeah, a private conversation between our commander-in-chief and a widow. That is the story.
Yeah. Jason, when you were injured in action, who got the call?
So my wife got the call. And I mean, it's very difficult, even so in my case, I mean, obviously shot in the face, they didn't know my mental state, and for my commanding officer to call her and say, hey, your husband's severely injured. Regardless,
and we just don't know what's going to happen.
Take it to the next level of somebody like General Kelly himself, who lost his own son. So it's incredibly disappointing to me. I feel as a nation that we are moving down this path where we are politicizing things that really should not be touched. And regardless of your political affiliations, there are over 1 million Americans who have laid down their lives for the freedom of this country since the beginning. And I think it is in time, you need to put politics aside. You cannot politicize something like this. And for somebody to insinuate that John Kelly was keeping his job by getting out there in front, anyone with half a mind could look at the pain he experienced when he talked about. And that notification, when somebody shows up at your door to say, I'm sorry, on behalf of the United States of America, your son or daughter has made the ultimate sacrifice for our country, that is a wound that family will never fully recover.
Absolutely.
And the fact of the matter is that President Trump cares deeply about our military, and
look at the flag.
Exactly.
Look at the anthem. It's clear what he is about.
He volunteered. When most presidents don't, the fact of the matter is most presidents don't call families of the fallen. He volunteered to make a very difficult call, to express condolences to a family.
Well,
and that was the right decision.
A point in Trump's corner is he had never made one of these calls before, so he reached out to John Kelly to gain some information because John Kelly is a Gold Star father.
But Kelly tried to talk him out of him.
He did. He gave him 2 options. He gave him 2 options. Look, if you make it, this is what comes in into play. If you don't make it, we'll understand. As my counterpart mentioned, the average president doesn't make these calls because there's just so many of them to be made.
writes the letters.
You have to accept that Donald Trump did go over and beyond to connect with a ghost father to make this happen.
John Kelly tried to explain to the president, and President Trump understood this, that all of us as military members, every one of us here, has been in a situation where we know we may not come home alive.
Sure.
And what he was trying to say in that moment is your son was doing what he was there to do. He was a Green Beret. I was a SEAL, Army, these things. We know what we're out there doing, trying to preserve the freedom of this country.
You know the risks.
And
You know
Trump
the
mentioned
risks.
that. He knew what he signed up before he got into it.
And that is
There's
a
no
common
draft.
expression in your business. I've got to ask you, Doctor, before you go, the congresswoman from Florida, she was on another morning show apparently, and according
The
to
rock star?
well,
The rock
we
star.
saw that soundbite.
The self-proclaimed rock star.
Well, now she's saying that the general's comment about the empty barrel that he made yesterday was racist. So sounds like that's what she's going forward with.
The
now.
congresswoman is speaking outside of her wheelhouse. What she's looking to do is gain some momentum going into the next series of elections. She's trying to politicize something. In actuality, this is not her space of expertise. We need to focus on, we had a fine soldier that we lost in Niger, and that should be what the narrative is, not her overhearing a conversation between that family and President Trump.
All right, guys.